For almost a year, we had to listen to Democrats claim to be the party of science when it came to absurd mask mandates. Now, the CDC says it's perfectly healthy to open the schools, and Democrat politicians ignore science to support the vile and selfish teachers' unions. The whole Biden run for president was one long, hypocritical lie, and shame on Americans for enabling fools and liars like this. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we start with the CDC, and they have now come out and said, hey, school's fine. In fact, schools may be the safest place for your kids. And the pro-science Democrats, well, they still don't want your kids to go back. Nevertheless, let's look at the CDC statement and compare it to what we know the CDC has been saying for a long time.
So, yeah, the CDC, I mean, it's kind of like Anthony Fauci of wear a mask, don't wear a mask. So CDC is like, don't go to school, now go to school.
Right.
We're at the point now where go to school. And so they came out and said, you know what? This whole debate we've got going on about, should we go back to school, should we not? Who's getting the virus, who's not? Who's transmitting it to other people, who's not? They're saying the science actually tells them that you should open the schools. And they said this, as the Washington Post actually reported, the CDC team reviewed data from studies in the United States and abroad and found the experience in schools different from nursing homes and high-density work sites where rapid spread has occurred. The review, which echoes the conclusions of other researchers, comes as many school districts continue to wrestle with whether and how to reopen schools, and as President Biden makes a return to in-person learning one of his top pandemic-related priorities.
This is the guy who said no. This is the guy Biden who sided with the teachers unions.
And the guy who's, I guess, press secretary, Jen Psaki, came out and was like, well, what we actually meant to say when it was return to school, or what the CDC director was saying here is actually,
Did she circle
and then she
around?
She said she would circle back.
Yeah,
to
she
that.
circled back. And
so
back
we
in
don't
circles.
know. Anywho.
Look, can we dispel the notion, please, for once and forever, that the Democrats are the party of science? Are you kidding me? For about 20 years now, politics leads the interpretation of science for Democrats. Don't get me started on global warming. That would prove my point, but would take me 45 minutes to do so. Just look at this situation, right? Everybody at the CDC now says it's okay. We've known, those of us who aren't scientists knew 5 months ago it was going to be okay. Those who have watched what was going on, those who, the World Health the World Health Organization that's flip-flopped on these things. Well, the one true fact of science that doesn't seem to have changed in 9 months is that young children are the least vulnerable, and that young children really don't seem to pass it on to the adults much. That's been true. That's the one thing that nobody's ever flip-flopped on. And yet, rather than taking that at its word, the CDC has gone back and forth and back and forth. But now the CDC, and I'm 90% sure the CDC is coming out and saying this now because Biden is president. We didn't see the CDC was cut off. The CDC was sharply criticized by the Trump administration, justly so. The WHO was cut off from Donald Trump, and rightly so, for their playing politics with the virus. And so now that Biden's back, all of a sudden, have you noticed this? Everything can return to normal now. Seems to me it's a lot less about what's good and true and right based on science than it is, okay, orange man bad, gone. We weren't going to give him that victory. We weren't going to send our kids back to school under Trump. He's gone. Now let's send him back. Only Biden sides with the teachers unions. Stay home. Not with the so-called science.
And the thing is, we reported on this pretty much exact story last week, and it's basically, we're just reiterating the simple point that science says get back in the classroom, go back and so hopefully learn something. And according to the CDC researchers that were in the article, the Journal of the American Medical Association, which we talked about last week, they had said the preponderance of available evidence from the fall school semester has been reassuring. There has been little evidence that schools have contributed meaningfully to increased community transmission. And they were talking, I think that might have been the exact same story where they were talking about specifically in North Carolina, where those students have been back since, guess what, September, when school is supposed to start, and poof, no corona for the kids or the teachers there. So
And they
we
could
can do
have
this.
said this in October. They could have said this in September. They could have said this in November. But
December, January.
Trump. And we can't say. Could you imagine if the CDC came out and made this announcement under Donald Trump? What Donald Trump would have done, and how Donald Trump would have pressured the teachers' unions?
Well, and the director did come out a couple different times. He's like a groundhog. Did he pop his head out or not? And he did say, well, we could go back. It was more wavering. Now it's like science. So
Well,
now it's okay.
Science is now that you have a Republic. Now that you do not have a Republican president, you have a Democrat one. Science can be science again, right?
Exactly.
As long as science benefits the people in the political party that most closely aligned, then it's fine. When you got Republicans in office, it's a different thing. Yeah.
Well, as I like to say, science is science unless it's politics. That's how we live here in America. Science is science.
That's the world.
Unless it's politics.
Did you see who the World Health Organization announced to be the next head? A complete radical leftist socialist anti-freedom person to be the head of the WHO with almost no medical background.
Well, who cares?
Who cares? See, science itself, the CDC, the WHO, Anthony Fauci. Does anybody really, really believe that Fauci is a scientist who knows what's going on here, or is he the number one political manipulator of science to support regimes that he likes and punish ones that he doesn't? It's that simple.
But, not to go off on a tangent, but very quickly, just so you know, it doesn't matter because all these acronyms you keep talking about are racist, by the way, in case you haven't heard. So it's, white supremacy. It's that white supremacy. If you use acronyms like CDC and WHO and all that, you're racist. White supremacy. Well, this is going to be an interesting little segment here because we're going to play which politicians took money from teachers' unions the most. Drum roll. We're going to go through the top 7 Democrats who have said, you know what, we can't go back to school. It's just too dangerous.
Despite what science says.
Also, teacher unions, thank you. I will gladly take thousands and thousands of dollars so I can be reelected to the House. Thank you. Much appreciated. So we're going to go through them because I want you to know how much money they took, where they're from, and then what they said about how it's scary to reopen the schools. And we start with our good friend, Representative Colin Allred, who's a Democrat from Texas, who took $20,102. And he said that Dallas County schools need to stay closed. And after they had initially voted to stay closed through Labor Day, he said, protecting our kids is our top priority. And we can't reopen our schools safely yet. I know this is not easy for many, but I support the decision to delay.
Is that a American flag? Because I don't see him wearing a lab coat. Is he a scientist?
Yeah, one who gets $20,000 from the teacher unions.
The whole the scientific basis, the scientific basics of his premise is simply, I'm getting paid by the teachers union to help keep the kids home, right?
Yes.
Who else do we have on our list?
Our next contestant, is Representative Cindy Axne, who's a Democrat from Iowa, who took $21,000 and has blasted Governor Kim Reynolds for reopening the schools because they actually had them in Iowa reopen. And she says, right now we're seeing teachers who are asking for living wills. Teachers are fighting back against the proclamation of the governor because they're scared for their own health and safety and that of their families.
Can we call these people what they are? Prostitutes for the teachers unions. They have prostituted themselves for the teachers' unions. Next, please.
Just next door is Representative Sean Casten in Illinois, who took $20,540 and claimed that opening schools would satisfy Donald Trump and Betsy DeVos. He says, if you care about our students and our teachers, don't listen to Betsy DeVos until she has a plan informed by scientists and public health experts.
Manho.
Reopening just to satisfy the president will serve only to kill more people. All right, we'll head out east to Connecticut, where we have Representative, is it Johanna Hayes?
Ho!
$20,279 from the teachers' unions went into her little coffer.
Bought and paid for.
She claimed it was irresponsible to open the schools because at the time, no scientific evidence.
Yeah.
This was back in August. There was none, except there was, and the CDC director back in August had said things, but science. Where is the point at which you think it would be safe to send kids back to schools, she asked. I can't think of any other segment of the economy that even proposed reopening at full capacity. Not airlines, not restaurants, not theaters, nothing, Dr. Seuss. And to have that even be a part of the conversation when it came to schools and not supported by the science of the data, I think is completely irresponsible.
Let's call her Cha-Ching Hayes.
Cha-ching Hayes. And then we're going to be back in the Midwest. These Midwestern representatives, I just don't understand. In Michigan, Representative Andy Levin,
A lady of the evening.
took $15,000. Not as much of a prostitute, I guess, as the others. Only $15,000.
Show us your frilly underthings,
Andy,
prostitute Levin.
Andy asks, I'm calling on this administration to stop demanding that in-person instruction resume while failing to contain the coronavirus or provide schools with the resources they need to reopen safely. Neither has any business ignoring the warning of public health experts, educators, and parents for the sake of their vanity projects. Vanity, Andy. Okay, well, let's move on. Number 6. We're almost there, people. We have Representative Stephanie Murphy in Florida, who took a measly $14,000. I don't know what she's doing.
Cheap hoe.
She's very cheap. She says that state leaders allowed the virus to spread unchecked, failed to implement aggressive measures to protect Floridians, and are moving forward with a school reopening plan that ignores the severity of community spread. It is no surprise the result has been an unmitigated disaster.
Stephanie, your virtue is worth more than $14K, honey.
Well, in the fact that she's in Florida, where Ron DeSantis has been now hailed as the governor of all governors. Whoopsie.
Well, that was Andrew Cuomo until it turned out that he killed all those senior citizens, right?
Which we knew all along.
DeSantis is a hero without murdering tens of thousands of senior citizens.
I tell you,
nice?
It's all about the children, though. Okay, and our final contestant.
Who's our final hoe?
She got the big bucks. It is Representative Abigail Spanberger from Virginia. I'm telling you, Virginia, what has happened to you? $27,406.
That's the high price call girl who will dress you up in diapers if you want to. She is the real thing.
She claims, Abigail, that teachers need the full vaccination before they return to the classroom. She says, I would like to see schools reopened as soon as possible, but as soon as possible and safe. My hope and expectation is that with the increased purchase of vaccinations, that we will be able to prioritize and strengthen vaccinations to teachers.
Look, these are the hoes of the Democrat Party. And what do we know about the hoes of the Democrat party, whether they're mimbos, gigolos, Richard Gere wannabes, or they're actually just hoes? What do we know? We know that they're selling their approval about your kid's life and education to the highest bidder, who happens to be the teachers' unions.
Well, let's talk about a very specific teachers union and the president, but actually now a resigned president or forced out president. We're not really sure what happened there. In Leominster, what? We're talking about Massachusetts, where the Massachusetts former teacher union head she's just saying how she's a full-on hypocrite. As we can see, the Leominster Education Association, the former president is named Leah Burns. She actually is a high school social studies teacher, so you would think she would know something about the American government, but no.
Nah.
So she's all about keeping the schools closed. And then she still sends her own son to a private parochial school that is in person. So, whoops. Just the simple fact that she is a public school teacher sending her own child to a parochial school.
So this is the hypocrite.
Anyway, that's the hypocrite part.
This is the hypocrite, not the hoe part of our show.
This is
hypocrites.
hippo.
Okay.
The union, again, she was the union head, gave a vote of no confidence to the state's education commissioner, Jeffrey Riley, who had demanded to know why it is that Leominster schools were still doing all virtual learning. So basically, they got called out, and the union was like, oh, how dare you say we are supposed to be in person? And so they gave the education commissioner a vote of no confidence. And Leah Burns wrote back making claims. Here they are. that Riley and the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education have failed to sufficiently consider input from individual districts, that they continue to ignore the ever-growing body of scientific evidence showing the direct correlation between in-person learning and the increased transmission rates of COVID-19 in a community. What? That's not what the science says. But anyway, they do not demonstrate the depth of understanding nor the impartial judgment needed to support students, faculty, and families. Oh, Leah Burns.
The union's talking about impartiality. Now that's a joke.
Now, what's funny is at one point, she had written on, I don't know if it was Facebook or Twitter or something, saying, someone remind me next time not to be the teacher union president during a pandemic. And then like people wrote back like, gotcha, girl. Anyway, because she resigned or she's no longer the president. But she did say, again, she sent her own kid, is currently sending her own kid to parochial school in person, but is saying that me, mom,
That's right.
needs to sit at home and drink my coffee, as you saw in the photo.
It's like the 9 layers of Dante's hell. We just passed through the level of the hoe, and we're now into the hypocrites, right?
Are they
the fraudulent
lower?
hypocrites? It's just getting worse and worse.
And Burns has said, since our working conditions are the students' learning conditions, we as educators have a responsibility to ensure that our schools are safe. As I kick my kid out the van door and say, bye, honey,
Right.
see you later. She says Commissioner Riley and the DESE need to listen more carefully and inclusively to health experts and educators from across the
Is
state.
she saying that what? Sending her kid to Catholic schools. The Catholic schools pray.
I think it is the Catholic schools.
Is all that prayer killing viruses?
Maybe it is. I think it is.
Maybe she actually believes that in the power of prayer. Maybe we shouldn't be so hard on her. Bring prayer back to the public schools, and then we'll send our kids back. What other excuse can we make for her?
Basically. And what's interesting is that the Leominster Education Association, whatever, their Facebook page really wasn't active for like a couple years. Then they put out this statement, and then all of a sudden they scrubbed it from it quickly, so it goes back to like nothing.
Right.
Whoops. And then the College Fix actually took a look at this, and they basically were like, hey, what's going on over there? And Burns just said, I'm not the president anymore. It's like abdicating all responsibility whatsoever. But it's not just her. It's not just the teacher union president or former teacher union president. It's also the superintendent who, you know, they're the ones who should be like fighting to say, hey, let's get back in school. But instead, she's, you know, off cheering for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
This hypocrisy, since our theme is hypocrisy for this segment, goes all the way back to Obama. Remember when Obama took office in 2009, and they had one of the very first things he did was kill this charter program aimed to help black inner city kids in Washington, D.C. So Obama, the great lover of African Americans, the great hero of black people, the first thing he does, one of his first official acts, is to take away the schooling for a lot of inner city black kids, while he sent his daughters to the Stedman.
I don't know.
Okay, forget the name of it.
Stedman's
really
the
high,
lover of Oprah,
incredibly expensive private school where and as Michelle Obama was starving kids to death with her lunch program, the menu for this Sitwell Friends, I think it was called. The lunch menu for this was packed with tens of thousands of calories, while he was taking those black kids out of school in Washington, D.C., and Michelle Obama then turned around and starved them to death in the public schools.
Oh, that's a little extensive, starving to death.
Hypocrisy.
But anyway, back to the superintendent, because we got to talk about how much she loves Tom Brady. Apparently, the Leominster superintendent, Paul LaDeacon, had announced that the school in Leominster, all of it, would be virtual through December. And then she decided, I love Tom Brady, and I can't see him anymore as a Patriot, so I must go all the way down to Florida to Tampa Bay to see him, to be at the Buccaneers' final regular season game. And I guess she's more of a Gronk fan than, apparently, according to her husband there, Todd.
While your kids are locked down and scrubbed raw every night, she's cavorting down in Tampa Bay. Oh, wait. And I wonder, as a good liberal in Massachusetts, why would she go to the state of that murderer Florida governor? Why would she do that?
It's all to see Gronk and TV.
Why would she fly to Florida to take advantage of the freedoms that Floridians have because you have a sane governor? Isn't that a little bit of liberal hypocrisy?
It's time for some real education. René Francois Magritte was a Belgian artist who was born in 1898 and lived all the way till 1967. His work falls in the camp of surrealism, and he often depicted in his art ordinary objects in unusual contexts, challenging the observer's preconditioned perceptions of reality. In 1964, he painted what would become his most famous painting, The Son of Man, and it actually is one of the most famous paintings of the 20th century.
Yeah, and here's the painting. I think you've all probably seen this. It has been so highly commercialized. It's one of those works of art that is iconic over and above its artistic merit. And Magritte, of course, was a very famous painter. This is his Andy Warhol moment. This is his soup cans moment, although I think Magritte was a much more serious artist than Warhol ever was. It's actually painted as a self-portrait. And as Magritte himself pointed out, the green apple, the Granny Smith apple, does not obscure his eyes. You can see him if you get a little closer in. You can see Magritte himself peering through the leaves at you. In fact, when he was asked to describe the painting himself, this is what he said. At least it hides speaking of the apple, at least it hides the face partly well. So you have the apparent face, the apple, hiding the visible but hidden, the face of the person. It's something that happens constantly. Everything we see hides another thing. We always want to see what is hidden by what we see. There is an interest in that which is hidden and which the visible does not show us. This interest can take the form of a quite intense feeling, a sort of conflict, one might say, between the visible that is hidden and the visible that is present. Now, this painting has a lot of relevance in what Magritte just said about masking. You think about the masks that people wear and what kind of masks they're wearing, and the new fashion vogue of masks. Now, apparently, there are fashionable and unfashionable ways to wear your mask. He does hit on something of an aspect of human nature that the surrealists in particular tried to draw out. Magritte painted, as I said, this is a self-portrait. It consists of a man in an overcoat and a bowler hat standing in front of a low wall beyond which the sea and a cloudy sky are visible. The man's face is largely obscured by this hovering green apple. However, the man's eyes do see through it. It's another subtle feature, another interesting point that people don't know what to make of it. If you look at his left arm, clearly, you see the elbow showing through. That arm has been twisted in an inverse way that it would anatomically actually fit. The title of the poem, of the painting, is also a tease, right? The Son of Man. There's lots of potential religious implication in that as well. And to close this segment out, a couple of interesting things. So important, so influential was this painting that it influenced a lot of other things. He used it again, Magritte, in his 1966 painting called Le Jeu de Mort, which was owned by Sir Paul McCartney. And that is what inspired the Beatles, that painting, that green apple in the painting, to name their record company Apple Corps. And Steve Jobs named Apple after Magritte's painting as well.
Whoa. Now we want to take a moment to show some love to our Patriot Club members, and today we're going to give a shout out to Celeste from Kirkland, Washington, all the way out there in Washington. Thank you for supporting us, Celeste. And if you're a fan of the show, please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation to support the Patriot Club, and we're going to send you our signature tumbler as just a little thank you. All you have to do to sign up is visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us. And just a reminder to please download our brand new Freedom Project Media app on your smart device. You're going to be able to watch all of our videos, including our 4-part lecture series entitled History of Human Dissection, Superstition, Science, and the Soul. And Dr. Duke really gets energized about this one. So you also get access on our app to all of our other lectures, our weekly shows, our in-depth interviews, our educational animations, and so much more. Simply search Freedom Project wherever you download your apps and make sure to allow for notifications.
And that wraps up the show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.